Hello, everyone. As Holly mentioned, my name is Watchen Nyanue, and I am so excited to be talking to you today about what to do when your employee asks for a raise. Um, as she mentioned, I know it can be very awkward. It can be awkward if you're prepared. It can be awkward if you feel unprepared. It can be awkward if it's high performing talent. It can be awkward if it's someone who is low performing talent. Like there is no situation for most of us in which talking about money is not awkward. Right now, we're going to talk about the tactics because there are different phases to a negotiation. And I feel like the reason that negotiations are so stressful for managers and people leaders is because we skip the first two phases and we go straight to the conversation, and we have not done any of the prep work that would have given you the tools and the ability to actually have negotiation conversations that are productive for both you and for your employees. So before someone asks you for a raise or comes with a negotiation thing, right? You should be setting yourself up for success. And there are very specific things that you should be doing and thinking about. I think Dana mentioned like, well, every day somebody's asking me for a raise, which means you are always in one of these phases. And so the more well-versed you get with them, that you can identify like, oh, I'm in phase one with this person, or I'm in phase three, it helps make the conversations a lot better and a lot easier. So for the promotions and raises, the first question to ask is, does your company have a process, right? Do you have an established process for how people get raises, when people get raises, right? And for a lot of us, it's in our employee handbook. We kind of know it, kind of don't. And as a leader, you may know it, but the second thing is, does your employee know what that process is? Right? Has it been clearly communicated to them so that, let's say they're asking you every day, do they know that they're asking you outside of a raise cycle? Do they know that there is a raise cycle? Right? And do you have the relationship that you will need like in the process to create a yes? Like where are your relationships as it pertains to the larger organization around what you can and can't do? So when we first started, Dana said like, I can't say, like, there's no way that I can say yes anyway because of all the strictness and all of this stuff. But I'm sure within an organization, right, there have been times where exceptions have been made, right? It might be really hard, but there are people who have the ability to do spot bonuses and other things. And so being really honest with yourself of like, what's the process? Do I know it? Have I communicated this process to the members of my team? Do they understand it and know like what can be done and what cannot be done? And then being really honest with yourself around what relationships you have in being able to move the needle in whatever capacity, right? And so there are companies, especially the larger the companies are, that are very traditional in that, you know, our process is you work X amount of years before you get promoted. I don't care how great you are. You work 3 years before you go to the next level. You work 5 years, you work 7 years. I have a client of mine that we work with, and you could be at the same title for 10 years and make more money. Well, that's not communicated to employees in their onboarding process. And so a person who comes from a company where you're getting promoted every 2 years and getting more money every 2 years, it's going to be a culture shock to them, right? To be at the same director level for 10 years, it's like, what am I doing wrong? Why is this not something that is like that? Why am I not being rewarded in the way that I'm accustomed to? And so you being very well versed in your promotion and raise process, and then also making sure that you have clearly and consistently communicated what that process is to your staff and to your team, makes it a lot easier when you get to the place where you are talking about money to them, because they'll know if you're doing it because you actually can't, and it doesn't create this narrative that you're picking favorites and all of these things. Is everybody's on the same page about the process. Okay. What if there is no process? So no process is kind of sort of a process, right? But what that does for your organization is that it allows your employees to create their own narratives, which is absolutely detrimental to your culture, right? Because then at the point where you say no to someone and then you say yes to someone else, they are then left to interpret why that person got a no and why this person got a yes. And because of confidentiality things with employment, you can't really tell them, right? Like specifically, Holly got promoted or got more money because of X, Y, and Z, and you're not doing this, right? And so it allows them to create in their own minds what it is, like why you made the decision that you did if there is no process. It also allows for you to it allows for there to be a little bit of bias in the decision-making process. So there's an article that Harvard Business School has, and it's called Setting Up to Fail. And one of the things that they talk about is the ways in which managers unconsciously set their employees up to fail. And the way that happens is, let's say in the beginning of having an employee, you decide like this person is a rock star. So most of what you see because of confirmation bias is going to be the good things that confirm that this person is a rock star. And if in the beginning you say this person is not a great employee, they're not up to standard, whatever the case may be, what your mind is trained to look for, again, is things that confirm that that person is not a great employee. And so when those two individuals come and ask you for money or for a raise, that bias can kick in if there is not a process that then kind of clouds your decision making on who actually deserves what. And so if you don't have a process in your company, if there's not an official process, how can you create a process within your department that then allows you to be objective in how you decide, if you have the ability to, who is allowed to get more money or what warrants someone getting more money versus what doesn't? Because then you have a framework that you're using to then justify your decisions, and it's fair across the board. So when we're talking about metrics and competencies, right, this is still in phase one. You are not having the conversation yet. What criteria do you have that then signals to someone, or that you can communicate to someone that they are ready for the next thing, right? So when you're negotiating, you could be negotiating a bunch of things. You could be negotiating, more vacation, a higher title, more money. But like, what are the behaviors that you expect to see out of your employees in order to say, yes, this person is ready for the next level? What are some hard metrics that you have? And I know for folks who manage teams who are maybe not numbers driven, right? So you're not managing a sales team, maybe you're managing an operations team, right? Are there metrics that you can use to help you decide when someone is actually ready or when somebody deserves what it is that they're asking for? Are there projects, right, that carry more weight than others that you need to let your teams know that you are then using to measure if they're ready for the next level? And then the last thing is, are there competencies that you need to see displayed in order to say, yes, I can pay this person 10,000 more, because if that raise or if that additional salary gets questioned by my boss or my boss's boss, I have this list of things that I've used, right, to determine why I said yes to this person and why I said no to this person. If you don't know what these things are as a manager, it's your job to check in with your managers and maybe HR to see what is actually established, if there are actually frameworks that are in place. And you need to have these conversations both internally to get the information first, but also with your employees. Like, this should be an ongoing conversation, not just when you're doing performance reviews, but if somebody, people need to be clear on what the difference between a manager and a director is. What actually makes somebody ready for those roles, and like the responsibilities of those roles, so that they can hopefully be self-aware enough to know if they have hit those marks for you or for themselves, or if they have not, so that when they come to have the conversation, it's not an opinion-based thing. It's here's what we use to measure. Everybody has known that this is what we're using to measure, and here's how you stack up based on expectations around these measures. The other thing to think about in phase one, as you think about the culture that you work in, is your culture around feedback. So when we talk to employees, and a lot of the times employees of color, the number one complaint that we get about their managers is that they don't give them feedback that they can actually use. Right? And they only get feedback when we're in performance review situation where you're saying no to me when I ask for money. Now all of a sudden I hear that you don't think that my competencies are up to snuff, right? And now it's like, oh, you're just saying that because you don't want to give me more money. But if you train yourself as a people manager to give feedback early and often, and give feedback that is specific, right? Balanced, constructive feedback with positive feedback, but not in the sense of like the feedback sandwich where they're like, say something nice, and then you say the thing that's the criticism and you then say something nice. What we've found is that your employees find that disingenuous. they feel like you're just saying the nice things to soften the blow. And especially if the nice things that you're saying aren't in real time, they aren't really nice things. It's like, I have to say something nice about this person, so I'm going to say something. It's like they want, if there are opportunities for them to improve, they expect you to tell them that in real time and not wait until months later, and then they feel blindsided when it's like they thought that for 6 months they've been doing all the right things. They come to you and ask you for this in a negotiation, they ask you for this thing, and now all of a sudden there's like a dumping of, well, you haven't done this, and you haven't done this, and you haven't done that. And the feedback for us typically is like, well, where was this 6 months ago? If you didn't think I did great on this project that we did in January, why am I just finding out about it in March, right? Or in October when we're doing performance reviews? And I think you need to connect your feedback with the criteria for their next promotion or raise, so that the feedback is not seen as something that's personal or a personal critique to them. They see it as something that's actually being given to them to help them accomplish the thing that they've said that they wanted to accomplish when they first talk to you about, whatever it is that they were trying to do this year. You can talk about what they're doing well, right? So not like fake praise, but if there are things that your employees are actually doing well that you want to see more of, you can say, like, I think that you have managed the budget well. I think you've done a great job leveraging relations with our clients and our customers to help grow the business. I think that you've put processes in place, that have helped make us more efficient, those types of things. But in order for me to be able to say yes to this next thing, here are the areas in which I still think you need development, right? That we can then use to help move you to the next level. So when you say no to something or not right now, make sure that you are connecting the dots between the feedback that you've given over the course of time and what they actually need to display, again, based on the metrics that we talked about that then help them move to the next level. So key takeaways: get clear on the process, ensure that there's clarity around metrics and competencies, provide ongoing feedback, and then be on the same team as your employees. And that's it. I know that was a ton of information, so happy to answer any questions that you guys may have as we wrap this up.